um, because I live in a majority Republican district, um, vast majority. My vote often, many elections, doesn't really mean anything. Um, uh, I have no chance. My candidate has no chance to win, and it's an exercise of democracy, but it doesn't mean anything because I'm not going to get a representative. I'm not going to vote for somebody who's going to represent my interests. And so, I mean, that's the first thing we have to agree on is that people have to see the wisdom and beauty in attempting to truly create representation, to to truly, if that's our goal, if that's our intent, with the one man, one vote, um, you know, and to have real choice, then there's a way to do that better than we're doing it now. Um, Currently, let's use the Senate as an example. I'm not saying we change this, but the Senate obviously is been manipulated to give certain people, certain states, um, to compensate for their weak population and give them extra power. I mean, California has a population that's over 30 million people and it has two senators. Alaska has a population that's under 600,000 and has two senators. I mean, it's a person in California. Obviously, their vote is diluted. Um, you know, how many times? 60 times. 50 times more diluted than a person in Alaska when it comes to control in the Senate. So there's a fundamental unfairness, and even the Electoral College is this whole concept that we're going to ignore the popular vote. We're going to ignore what the voters said as individuals, and we're going to decide who the president is based on this statewide calculation of who won enough majorities in enough states. And people will cling to that idea, but to me, it's abhorrent to the whole idea that you're going to have an election. It should mean something. If people are if you're going to say it's one man, one vote, then those votes should mean something. And if you're going to just say that no, it doesn't matter, because by this geographic regional scenario, the popular president can't be president. So anyway, that is, to me, these are unnecessary disenfranchisements. You're basically taking people's authority away. You're giving them no representation. You're just stealing their rights and their vote. And if you can't get past that argument, if you can't see that it is wrong for one person's vote to mean more than another person's vote, well, then there's no point in listening any further. There's nowhere to go. Obviously it's the concept. You just don't get it. You know, you don't get the ethical necessity to allow everybody to have a fair voice, an equal voice. And if you don't see that, you don't see it. I mean, how can you make the argument for it? It's one of those things that difference between war and peace, whatever. I mean, these are all these big issues, these big things. I mean, you either see it or you don't see it. And so I'll go on the presumption that you understand that that's the goal and that's what we want to achieve. We want to achieve a representative democracy where people have an incentive to vote because they're going to go choose their representative. They're not going to be choosing between, Adolf Hitler and Mussolini. They're going to be choosing between something that they actually want to win the election. Not a lesser of evils, but a best of the best. And so, to change this system, we have to change the focus. The focus can't be geography, and it's got to be ideology. People have to be represented for what they believe in, not for where they live. I mean, it just doesn't. This doesn't. Geography sometimes it has a part in your life, and you certainly should have the right to vote your geography. Okay, so if you want to vote for a representative who has no other mission but to go to that legislative body and advocate for your farm rights or for your other state rights or this right or that right, your local rights, well, you can do that. But a person who wants something more than that, wants to be represented by something real, should have the right to do that, to vote on their politics, not on where they're living. And so if we get rid of the idea of basing every election on a geographic district and open legislative elections up. So basically, let's say if there's an election for a state legislative body, you wouldn't vote based on your region. Certainly, you would vote regionally, you would vote locally, but you could vote for a candidate that would be statewide. I mean, you could vote for somebody who actually lived in some other state. You could vote for anybody who was on the a registered candidate, and and all that would depend on is if enough people voted for that person, he would be elected. And each representative, I mean, the key difference would be is each representative would be only electable based on affirmative votes. They couldn't steal any part of their constituency. So you would get elected, you'd have to get, let's say the required number of votes was 100,000. You would have to get the 100,000 affirmative votes to be elected. And if you didn't, you weren't elected. There just wouldn't be any, you want a 51% majority or 53% majority. No, to get into the group, you have to get sufficient number of votes. And, to make that possible, all we have to do is have a voting system where you might have 100 choices. There might be 100 candidates, and you would vote for your candidate. You'd have a choices that would range, maybe 10 choices, 5 choices. It really doesn't matter, but you'd have the ability to vote for a first, second, third, fourth, fifth, based on your priority, based on which guy you'd want to win. So if